Clara Morrison pressed her twin babies against her chest and felt the last piece of her heart shatter. "I never agreed to children." Jasper Callahan announced, his voice carrying across Silver Creek's frozen town square. "You deceived me, Mrs. Morrison. You and your baggage ain't welcome here." 6 months old. Lily and Jack. All she had left of a husband who died before they drew their first breath. And now she stood in the bitter January cold, surrounded by strangers with nowhere to go. But sometimes, the cruelest rejection opens the door to unexpected grace. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far Clara's story reaches. Subscribe and stay with me until the end. Now, let's begin where desperation meets dignity. The freight wagon jolted to a stop, and Clara Morrison's stomach dropped straight through her worn boots. She'd imagined this moment 100 times during the 6-week journey from Tennessee. The relief, the safety, the end of running. Instead, she felt ice crawling up her spine that had nothing to do with the Dakota winter. "Silver Creek," the driver grunted. "End of the line, ma'am." Clara gathered Lily and Jack tighter against her chest. The makeshift slings cut into her shoulders, but she barely noticed. 6 months of carrying these babies alone had made the weight familiar. She climbed down from the wagon, her legs stiff, her whole body aching from days of rough travel. The twins fussed against her, sensing her fear the way babies always do. "Hush now," she whispered. "Mama's got you. Mama's always got you." The town square stretched before her, frozen and gray. A dozen people had stopped to watch the wagon arrive. Clara scanned their faces, searching for the man from the photograph. Jasper Callahan. Merchant seeks capable woman for partnership. Comfortable home. Honest work. She'd answered that advertisement with trembling hands and desperate hope. Written 3 letters explaining her situation. Widow. Twin infants. Willing to work hard. He'd written back once. "Come in January. I'll be waiting." Clara spotted him emerging from the mercantile across the square. Tall, broad-shouldered, iron gray threading through dark hair. Exactly like his photograph. She tried to smile. "Mr. Callahan." He stopped 10 feet away. His eyes dropped to the bundles against her chest. Something cold crossed his face. "What the hell is this?" Clara's smile died. "I'm Clara Morrison. I wrote to you about... I know who you are." His voice cut through the frozen air like a blade. "What I don't know is why you've arrived with those." He pointed at the babies. Clara's arms tightened instinctively. "I wrote to you. I explained about my children. I sent 3 letters." "You wrote about children." Jasper's lip curled. "I never agreed to children." The words hit her like a physical blow. "But," you responded. "You said to come in January." "I said come. I didn't say bring your baggage." Lily began to whimper. Clara pressed her hand against the baby's back, trying to soothe her, while her own world tilted. "They're not baggage," she said, her voice shaking. "They're my children." "Same thing." Jasper took a step back, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. "I wanted a wife, Mrs. Morrison. A partner. Not a charity case with 2 mouths that can't feed themselves." Clara felt eyes on her from every direction. The woman outside the general store. The men loading a wagon. The children pressed against shop windows. Everyone watching. Everyone witnessing her humiliation. "Please." The word tasted like ash in her mouth. "I sold everything to come here. My mother's china, my wedding ring. I have nothing left. If you could just..." "Not my concern." Jasper's voice went flat. Final. "You deceived me. Thought you could show up with brats, and I'd just accept them because you'd already made the trip." "I didn't deceive anyone." Clara's voice cracked. "I told you the truth. Every letter. Then you thought wrong about my response." He turned toward the gathered crowd, his voice rising. "Let it be known, I bear no responsibility for this woman or her circumstances. She arrived under false pretenses, and I'm within my rights to refuse her." Jack started crying. Then Lily. both babies wailing in the frozen square, while Clara stood helpless, tears burning her eyes, but refusing to fall. She would not cry in front of these people. She would not. Please. She hated how small her voice sounded. There must be work I could do. Something, anything. I can sew. I can cook. I can clean. I'll do whatever. No. Jasper was already walking away. Riverbend has enough mouths to feed Mrs. Morrison. I suggest you find passage back to wherever you came from. His boot prints marked the snow. Dark. Final. Getting smaller with each step. Clara stood frozen. Her babies screaming. Her traveling bag at her feet. Her entire world reduced to this moment of complete and utter ruin. Around her, the watching faces began to turn away. The entertainment was over. She tried to breathe. Her lungs wouldn't cooperate. What now? Where could she go? She had $4.37. Not enough for passage anywhere. Not enough for a week's lodging. Not enough to keep her babies fed through the winter. She'd gambled everything on this chance. And lost. Mrs. Morrison. The voice was quiet, steady, coming from her left. Clara turned, expecting more judgment, more cruelty. Instead, she found a man watching her with something she hadn't seen in months. Genuine concern. He was perhaps 35, tall and lean in a dark wool coat. Brown hair touched with gray at the temples. Calm eyes that held no mockery, no contempt, just simple human recognition of suffering. I'm Dr. Nathaniel Harper. He moved closer, his movements careful. I couldn't help but overhear. May I ask how long since these children have eaten? Clara blinked. The question was so practical, so unexpected that it cut through her panic. This morning, she managed, before we reached town. And you? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. His eyes held hers, patient but unyielding. When did you last eat, Mrs. Morrison? Yesterday. She couldn't remember exactly. The last way station had been short on food. There wasn't much at the last stop. Right. Dr. Harper picked up her traveling bag before she could protest. My mother runs the boarding house 3 buildings down. The rooms are clean. The food is hot. He paused, holding up a hand when she opened her mouth. Before you object, this isn't charity. This is basic human decency, something that seems to be in short supply in Silver Creek today. I can't pay. The words came out harsh, defensive. I have almost nothing. We'll sort that out after you've eaten and rested. He gestured toward the 2-story building with smoke rising from its chimney. Can you walk? Clara's legs felt like they might buckle, but she nodded. She didn't have any other choice. Dr. Harper didn't offer his arm, didn't treat her like something fragile that might break. He simply walked beside her, matching her pace, carrying her bag, like it weighed nothing. What kind of doctor? She heard herself ask. The only kind for 30 miles. That must keep you busy. It does. He glanced at her sideways. You're handling this well. I'm not handling anything. Clara's voice came out bitter. I'm walking because standing still felt worse. That's handling it. Something flickered in his expression. Not pity, recognition. Some folks would have sat down in that square and given up. I have children. Clara looked down at Lily and Jack, finally quieting against her chest. Giving up isn't something I'm allowed to do. No, Dr. Harper said quietly. I reckon it's not. The boarding house door opened before they reached it. A woman stood in the entrance, perhaps 60, with silver hair pinned in a neat bun and sharp blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She took one look at Clara, at the babies, at her son carrying a stranger's bag, and her expression shifted from curiosity to fierce determination. Lucas, what happened? Ma, this is Mrs. Morrison. She just arrived on the freight wagon. Dr. Harper Lucas apparently set down the bag inside the door. Jasper Callahan turned her away, in front of half the town. That snake. The older woman was already moving forward, her hands reaching for Clara's elbow, guiding her inside. Come in, come in. Don't stand in that doorway letting the heat out. Lord above, those babies must be frozen solid. They're hungry. Clara's voice wavered. I need to feed them, but You need to sit down before you fall down. The woman, Mrs. Harper, guided her to a chair near a massive iron stove. Warmth washed over Clara like a physical embrace. I'm Ida. That's my son Nate. And you're safe now. You hear me? Whatever happened in that square, you're safe in this house. Clara sat. The warmth seeped into her bones. The babies quieted, sensing the change in atmosphere. And without warning, tears spilled down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them. Couldn't control the sobs that racked her body. 6 months of grief and terror and exhaustion came pouring out in great heaving waves while Ida Harper knelt beside her and held her hands and didn't say a single word. When Clara finally caught her breath, mortified and drained, Ida simply handed her a handkerchief. Feel better. I'm sorry. Clara wiped her face. I don't usually... Honey, you just traveled 6 weeks to marry a man who threw you away in front of witnesses. If you weren't crying, I'd be worried about you. Ida stood, her joints creaking. Now, let's get those babies fed. Then you eat. Then you sleep. Everything else can wait until tomorrow. I can't pay, Clara said again. I have $4. That's everything. Did I ask for payment? No, but... Then hush. Ida's voice brooked no argument. Nate, bring hot water and clean cloths to the blue room. Mrs. Morrison, can you manage the stairs? Clara nodded. Her legs still shook, but she could manage. She'd been managing for months. Upstairs, the blue room was small but clean. A bed covered in quilts. A washstand. A window overlooking the street below. Not large, but warm. Warm and quiet and safe. Clara sank onto the mattress and unwrapped the twins from their makeshift slings. Lily and Jack, red-faced, fussing, their small fists waving in distress. Oh, my darlings. Clara's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Mama's so sorry. She'd promised them safety, promised them a home, and instead she'd delivered them into another disaster. Robert would be ashamed of her. No, don't think about Robert. She fumbled with her traveling dress, preparing to nurse. Her fingers were clumsy, too cold, too tired. A knock at the door. It's Ida. I have warm water. Come in. Ida entered with a steaming pitcher and clean towels. She took one look at Clara's shaking hands and moved to help. Let me hold one while you tend the other. She lifted Jack with practiced ease. There now. There's a good boy. Settle down, little one. Your mama's right here. Clara positioned Lily and felt the baby latch on hungrily, the familiar tug, the release of tension in her tiny body. You're good with babies, Clara said quietly. Had 3 of my own. Ida settled into the room's single chair, swaying gently with Jack. Lost my daughter Sarah in childbirth 12 years ago. The baby too. I'm sorry. So am I, every single day. Ida's voice was matter-of-fact. No self-pity, just truth. But that's not your burden to carry. Tell me something what happened with Jasper Callahan, the real version, not whatever he shouted in the square. Clara hesitated. Then the words poured out. The advertisement in the Memphis paper. The 3 letters she'd written explaining everything, her husband's death in a railroad accident, the twins born 2 months later. The in-laws who wanted to take the children, the desperate need to escape. He wrote back once, Clara finished. Just said to come in January. I thought... She swallowed. I thought he understood. I thought silence meant acceptance. You thought wrong. Ida's voice carried quiet fury. Jasper Callahan doesn't accept anything that doesn't serve his purposes. He wanted a pretty wife to show off, a decoration for his store, not a real woman with real complications. He called them baggage. Clara's voice broke on the word. My children, he called them baggage. And that tells you everything you need to know about the man. Ida shifted Jack to her other shoulder. You're better off without him, Clara. Though I know it doesn't feel that way right now. It feels like the end of everything. It's not. Ida met her eyes directly. This is just the end of one path. There are others, better ones. You just can't see them yet because you're exhausted and scared, and your whole body is screaming that the danger isn't over. Isn't it? Not entirely. Ida was honest. You're a stranger here. A woman alone with 2 babies and no resources. People will talk, judge, make assumptions. Her chin lifted. But you're also in my house now, and I don't let anyone hurt the people under my roof. Clara felt something shift in her chest. A tiny crack in the wall of ice that had formed around her heart. Why? She whispered. You don't know me. I could be anyone. Why would you help? Ida was quiet for a long moment. Because I remember what it felt like to need help and not receive it, she said finally. When Sarah was dying, when I was holding her hand and watching her slip away, the nearest doctor was 2 days' ride. Nobody came. Nobody helped. She died in my arms while I prayed for anyone to save her. Clara's throat tightened. That was before Nate finished medical school, Ida continued. Before he came back here and set up practice. Now when someone needs help in Silver Creek, they get it. Because my son remembers too. Dr. Harper lost someone. His wife, his daughter. Ida's voice softened. Scarlet fever 4 years ago. Emily was 28. Grace was 3 months old. He almost didn't survive the grief. Coming back here, taking over his father's practice. That's what saved him. Clara looked down at Lily, now drowsy at her breast. Then at Jack, finally settling in Ida's arms. 3 months old. The same age as Dr. Harper's daughter when she died. No wonder he'd looked at her twins with such careful gentleness. I'm sorry, Clara said. For all of you, Métez. For everything you've lost. Don't be sorry. Be rested. Ida stood, handing Jack back carefully. There's stew keeping warm downstairs. I'll bring some up after you've fed them both. You need food and sleep before you can think about what comes next. Mrs. Harper. Ida. Clara hesitated. Thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay. You'll repay me by getting through this. Ida moved toward the door. By showing Jasper Callahan and everyone else in this town that Clara Morrison is worth 10 of him. That's payment enough. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Clara sat in the quiet room. The warmth from the stove below seeped up through the floor. Outside, the Dakota winter howled, but in here she was sheltered. Lily finished nursing and fell asleep. Clara shifted to feed Jack, going through motions so familiar they'd become automatic. 6 months. 6 months since Robert died. 6 months of terror and grief and survival. She'd sold her mother's china to pay his gambling debts, sold her wedding ring to buy passage west, sold everything she owned except the clothes on her back and 2 babies who depended on her completely. And now she sat in a stranger's boarding house with $4 and no plan. But she had warmth, food coming, a roof for the night. That was more than she'd had an hour ago. We're going to be okay, she whispered to her sleeping children. I don't know how yet, but we're going to be okay. She didn't quite believe it, but she said it anyway. Because sometimes saying the words is the first step toward making them true. Later that evening, after Clara had eaten and slept for 3 hours and woken to feed the twins again, she found herself sitting in the boarding house's common room across from Dr. Nathaniel Harper. He looked tired. His medical bag sat at his feet, dusty from whatever calls he'd made that afternoon. But his eyes were alert, focused on her with that same steady attention he'd shown in the square. My mother says you need work, he said without preamble. Clara's hands tightened in her lap. I do, but I don't know what kind of work I could find here. I don't know anyone. And with the babies... Can you read? She blinked. Yes. Write clearly. Yes. Do figures keep accounts? I managed my husband's household accounts. Clara straightened slightly. Before things went wrong, I handled all our finances, paid bills, balanced ledgers. Good. Nate leaned forward. I need help. The practice is drowning in paperwork. Patient files, supply orders, correspondence with medical suppliers. I've tried to keep up, but... He gestured vaguely. I can't treat patients and manage records at the same time. Something always suffers. Clara's heart began to beat faster. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a chance to prove yourself. His voice was careful, honest. The work isn't glamorous. You'd be organizing files, maintaining records, maybe assisting with basic tasks around the clinic. The pay would be $30 a month plus room and board here at the boarding house. My mother has a ground floor room you and the twins could use. $30. Room and board. Enough to survive. Enough to save. Enough to build something. What's the catch? Clara heard herself ask. Nate's eyebrows rose. Excuse me. There's always a catch. Her voice came out harder than she intended. In my experience, when something seems too good, there's usually a cost hiding underneath. For a moment, Nate just looked at her. Then something shifted in his expression, not offense, but understanding. The catch is that people will talk. His voice was quiet, blunt. A young widow working closely with a widowed doctor, living under the same roof more or less. The gossip will be ugly. I've already been publicly humiliated once today. Clara's chin lifted. Gossip seems like a small price compared to watching my children starve. It might not feel small when you're living it. Then I'll learn to live with it. She met his eyes directly. Dr. Harper, I've survived worse than whispers. If you're willing to give me a chance, I'm willing to work harder than anyone you've ever hired. A pause. Then Nate nodded slowly. All right, Mrs. Morrison, we'll try it. Starting tomorrow. He stood reaching for his medical bag. One more thing. Yes. Call me Nate. If we're going to work together, might as well dispense with the formalities. Clara stood too, extending her hand. Then call me Clara. He shook her hand. His grip was firm, calloused, the hands of a man who worked with them daily. Welcome to Silver Creek, Clara. Something almost like a smile crossed his face. Sorry about the rough introduction. I've had worse welcomes. She thought of her husband's family, of the lawyers and creditors, and all the people who'd wanted to take her children. At least here, someone was willing to help. Nate paused at the doorway. His expression grew serious. Clara, what I did today helping you, it wasn't charity, and it wasn't obligation. He met her eyes. It was remembering what it felt like to drown and choosing to throw someone a rope instead of watching them go under. He left before she could respond. Clara stood alone in the common room, her hand still tingling where he'd shaken it. Tomorrow she would start a new job, learn new skills, begin building a life from the ashes of her plans. Tonight, she would check on her sleeping twins. She would lie awake, listening to them breathe. She would let herself feel just for a moment the fragile, dangerous thing called hope. She'd come to Silver Creek expecting safety. She'd found rejection instead. But maybe, just maybe, she'd also found something else. The door to the boarding house rattled as wind hit it. Outside, snow was falling again, the temperature dropping toward dangerous cold. Clara walked to the window and looked out at the frozen town that had received her so cruelly. Somewhere out there, Jasper Callahan was congratulating himself on avoiding an inconvenient entanglement. He had no idea what he'd thrown away. But Clara was beginning to understand what she might have gained. Clara's first morning at the clinic started before dawn. The twins woke hungry at 4, and by the time she'd fed them, changed them, and settled them back to sleep, pale light was creeping through the window. She dressed quickly in her cleanest traveling dress, worn thin at the elbows, but respectable, and made her way to the connecting door between the boarding house and clinic. Nate was already there. He stood at a desk buried under papers, patient files, correspondence receipts, all jumbled together in complete chaos. He looked up when she entered. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep." Clara moved closer, studying the disaster. "This is what you need organized." "This is about half of it." Nate ran a hand through his hair. "The rest is in those cabinets, and that box, and probably under the examination table." Clara felt something settle inside her. This at least she knew how to handle. "Show me your filing system." "My what?" "How do you organize patient records alphabetically, by date of treatment, by type of ailment?" Nate stared at her blankly. "I put them in the drawer when I'm done." "Which drawer?" "Whichever one has space." Clara closed her eyes briefly. "All right. We're starting from scratch." She worked through the morning while Nate saw patients in the examination room. Sort. Categorize. Label. Create order from chaos. It felt good. Useful. Like rebuilding something broken. By noon, she'd organized 2 months of patient files into a functioning system. Alphabetical by surname. Color-coded tabs for type of treatment. Cross-referenced with a master ledger she'd started creating. Nate emerged from examining a farmer's infected hand and stopped dead. "What did you do?" "My job." Clara held up a file. "Henderson Thomas. Age 42. Treated for influenza in November. You noted he should follow up in January, but there's no record that he did." Nate took the file, flipping through it. "I forgot about that follow-up." "Now you have a system to remind you." Clara pointed to the ledger. "Everyone who needs follow-up care is listed here with dates. I'll check it every morning and let you know who's overdue." Clara. Nate's voice was strange. "You did this in one morning." "The rest will take longer, but yes." He looked at her like she'd performed some kind of miracle. Clara felt heat creep up her neck. "It's just organization. Anyone could—" "No." He set down the file. "Anyone couldn't. I've hired 3 assistants in the past 2 years. None of them lasted more than a month, and none of them could make sense of this chaos. Maybe they weren't motivated enough." "What motivates you?" Clara thought of Lily and Jack napping in the back room. Of $4.37. Of Jasper Callahan's voice echoing across the square. "Fear," she said honestly. "Fear of failing. Fear of not being enough." Nate was quiet for a moment. "Fear's a good motivator," he said finally. "But it burns out fast. We'll have to find you something better." Before Clara could respond, the clinic door burst open. A woman rushed in, wild-eyed, clutching a boy of maybe 7 against her chest. The child was gasping, his lips turning blue, his small hands clawing at his throat. "He can't breathe." The mother's voice cracked. "Something's stuck. Please, God, help him." Nate moved instantly. "Set him on the table." Clara hold his head still. Clara didn't think, didn't hesitate. She positioned herself behind the examination table and steadied the boy's thrashing head while Nate forced his mouth open. "I need light. Hold him steady." The boy's eyes rolled with terror. His mother sobbed in the corner. Clara gripped harder. "It's okay, sweetheart. The doctor's going to help you. Just hold still for me." Nate reached into the boy's throat with forceps. Once. Twice. The child gagged violently. Then Nate pulled something free, a small wooden button, and the boy sucked in a massive rattling breath. Color flooded back into his face. His mother collapsed against the wall, weeping. "He swallowed it," she gasped. "From his coat. I told him not to put things in his mouth. I told him—" "He's fine now." Nate's voice was calm, steady. "The airway's clear. He'll have a sore throat for a day or 2, but no lasting damage." Clara realized her hands were shaking. She stepped back, trying to compose herself. The mother turned to her. You helped. You held him still. Thank you. Thank you both. I didn't do anything. Clara's voice came out thin. Dr. Harper. You did exactly what was needed. Nate caught her eye. That's not nothing, Clara. That's everything. After the mother and child left, Clara leaned against the filing cabinet and tried to stop her hands from trembling. Does that happen often? Often enough. Nate was cleaning his instruments. Emergency medicine isn't scheduled. You'll see worse than a swallowed button. I know. Clara forced her hands to still. I've never been part of saving someone before. You're part of it now. Nate set down the forceps. How do you feel? Clara considered the question honestly. Terrified. Exhilarated. Alive. Like I want to learn more. Nate smiled. Actually smiled. It transformed his whole face. Good answer. The first week passed faster than Clara expected. She learned the rhythm of the clinic. Morning paperwork. Afternoon patients. Evening catch-up on whatever chaos the day had created. The twins adapted well, sleeping in a borrowed cradle in the back room, fussing only when they were hungry or needed changing. Ida helped constantly. She'd appear at exactly the right moments to take a baby, or bring food, or simply sit with Clara during the rare quiet hours. You're good at this, Ida said one evening, watching Clara reorganize the medicine cabinet. Better than anyone Nate's hired. I'm just cleaning up messes, it's not hard work. Making order from chaos is some of the hardest work there is. Ida handed her a cup of tea. Most people can't see patterns. You see them everywhere. Clara paused a bottle of laudanum in her hand. I used to help my husband with his accounts. Before he... She stopped. Before the gambling. Clara nodded tightly. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. There's not much to tell. Clara resumed organizing, keeping her hands busy. Robert was a good man when I married him. Hardworking. Kind. Then his brother introduced him to cards, and it was like watching someone disappear slowly. By the time he died, I barely recognized him. How did he die? Railroad accident. Clara's voice went flat. 3 months before the twins were born. I found out about the debts the same week I found out he was gone. Ida was quiet for a moment. That's a lot of loss for one person to carry. I don't have a choice about carrying it. Clara closed the cabinet. The only choice is whether to keep walking or stop. And you keep walking. I have 2 babies who need me to keep walking. Clara turned to face Ida. Everything else is just putting one foot in front of the other until the path gets easier. Does it get easier? Clara thought about the question, about the raw grief that had consumed her 6 months ago, about the terror that still woke her some nights. Not easier, she said finally, but different. The weight doesn't get lighter, you just get stronger at carrying it. Ida reached out and squeezed her hand. You're going to be all right, Clara Morrison. I know it. Clara wanted to believe her. She almost did. The gossip started on Clara's second week. She first noticed it at the general store. Ida had sent her for supplies, flour, sugar, some fabric for the twins' clothes, and Clara had walked through town with her head high, determined not to show fear. The whispers followed her like shadows. That's her. The one living at the boarding house. Working for the doctor, I heard. Unmarried widow with 2 babies. Convenient arrangement, ain't it? Clara kept walking, kept her expression neutral, but her shoulders tightened with every step. Inside the store, a woman with sharp features and a pinched mouth watched her approach the counter. Help you. I need 5 pounds of flour, 2 pounds of sugar, and whatever fabric you have in light cotton. The woman, Clara later learned her name was Vivian Fletcher, took her time responding. Her eyes traveled over Clara's worn dress, her work-roughened hands, her face. You're the one staying at Ida Harper's place. Yes. Working with the doctor. Yes. Mighty cozy arrangement. Vivian's voice dripped false sweetness. Young widow moving in with a widower. People are talking. Clara felt heat climb her neck. People can talk all they want. I'm working, that's all. If you say so. I do say so. Clara kept her voice level. Now are you going to sell me flour, or should I take my business elsewhere? Something flickered in Vivian's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. 5 pounds of flour. Coming up. Clara paid and left her purchases clutched against her chest. Outside, the cold air hit her face like a slap. She'd expected gossip. Nate had warned her, but hearing it was different from knowing it would come. Mrs. Morrison. Clara turned. A woman stood behind her, perhaps 40, with dark hair shot through with silver and calm eyes that held no judgment. I'm Margaret Cole. I own the millinery shop on Oak Street. She fell into step beside Clara. I saw what happened in there. I'm sorry. Nothing happened. She sold me flour. She also implied you're sleeping with the town doctor. Margaret's voice was dry. That's not nothing. Clara stopped walking. Are you here to warn me? Tell me I should leave town before my reputation is completely destroyed? I'm here to tell you that Vivian Fletcher is a bitter old cat who hasn't had a kind word for anyone since her husband ran off with a saloon girl in '79. Margaret smiled slightly. I'm also here to tell you that not everyone in Silver Creek thinks with her brain. Could have fooled me. Give it time. Margaret touched her arm briefly. Some of us remember what it's like to be new here, to be judged before we've had a chance to prove ourselves. You were new once. 8 years ago. Showed up with a dead husband's debts and a dream of opening my own shop. Margaret's chin lifted. Half the town said I'd fail. The other half said I'd end up married to whoever would have me within 6 months. What happened? I opened my shop, made it profitable, never remarried. Margaret's smile widened. Now half the town buys their hats from me, and the other half wishes they could afford to. Clara felt something loosen in her chest. That's quite a story. It's not finished yet. Margaret nodded toward the boarding house. Neither is yours. Keep your head up, Mrs. Morrison. The talkers run out of steam eventually. The workers are the ones who last. She walked away before Clara could respond. Clara stood in the frozen street holding her flour and sugar, and felt the first fragile thread of something she hadn't expected to find in Silver Creek. Friendship. The first real test came 3 weeks into Clara's employment. She was transcribing patient notes, slowly learning to decode Nate's cramped handwriting, when the clinic door crashed open. A rancher named Jim Hollister stumbled in supporting his teenage son. The boy's leg was bent at an angle that made Clara's stomach lurch. Horse through him, Jim gasped. The bone's broke. You can see it. Nate was at their side instantly. Get him on the table. Clara, I need hot water bandages and the splinting supplies. Now! Clara's hands were already moving. She gathered everything Nate asked for, organizing it on the tray beside the examination table. The boy Tom, she learned, was white with pain, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscles jumping. I need to set this before it swells any worse. Nate's voice was calm, clinical. Clara, you'll have to hold him. What? The leg. While I set it. Nate met her eyes. He's going to fight. He won't mean to, but the pain will make him. You need to keep him still. Clara looked at the broken leg, at the boy's terrified face, at his father who was shaking too hard to be useful. Tell me what to do. Nate positioned her at the end of the table, her hands braced on Tom's ankle and thigh. When I count to 3, I'm going to pull and twist. The bone needs to realign. You hold him down. Don't let go no matter what. Clara nodded. Her heart hammered in her chest. 1. She gripped tighter. 2. Tom whimpered. 3. Nate pulled. Tom screamed. His whole body convulsed, fighting the agony. Clara held. Her arms burned. Her shoulders screamed. But she didn't let go. A hideous grinding sound. Then a click that seemed to echo through the room. It's set. Nate's voice was breathless. Clara, you can release him. She let go and stumbled backward, her arms shaking. Tom had passed out, which was probably a mercy. That was... Clara's voice wouldn't work properly. That was perfect. Nate was already splinting the leg, his movements swift and sure. You held exactly right. No wavering, no hesitation. I wanted to let go. But you didn't? He glanced at her. That's what matters. Jim Hollister was weeping quietly in the corner. Is he? Will he be? He'll walk again, Nate said. The break was clean. With rest and proper care, he'll heal completely. Jim grabbed Nate's hand, then Clara's. Thank you, both of you. God bless you both. After they'd settled Tom in the boarding house's spare room to recover, Clara found herself sitting on the clinic steps, trying to stop her hands from trembling. Nate came out and sat beside her. Neither spoke for a moment. First bone setting, he asked finally. First anything. Clara stared at her hands. 6 weeks ago, I was selling my wedding ring to pay debts. Now I'm holding down boys while their bones get yanked back into place. Life changes fast. Too fast sometimes. Nate was quiet. Then, you did well today, Clara. Better than well. Most people would have panicked. I panicked. No, you were scared. There's a difference. He turned to look at her. Panic means losing control. Fear means feeling it, but doing what needs doing anyway. Is that how you get through it? All these years of emergencies and broken bones and dying people. Clara winced. Yes. Nate's voice was gentle. That's how I get through it. By remembering that fear is just information. It tells you something matters. What you do with that information is what defines you. Clara thought about that, about all the fear she'd carried for months, about what she'd done with it. Run, survive, arrive in a strange town with nothing but hope, and now hold down a screaming boy while a doctor set his shattered bone. I think I understand, she said slowly. You do. Nate stood, offering his hand to help her up. That's why you're going to be good at this, Clara. You understand fear without letting it control you. She took his hand. His grip was warm, steady. We should go inside, she said. The twins will be waking soon. Clara. He didn't release her hand immediately. What you're building here, the work, the life, it's real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She met his eyes. In the fading light, they were kind, sincere. I'm starting to believe that, she said. And for the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, it was true. The 4th week brought a visitor Clara hadn't expected. She was organizing supply orders when the clinic door opened and a well-dressed man walked in. Middle-aged, expensive coat, an air of authority that reminded Clara of bankers and lawyers and all the men who'd circled her after Robert's death. I'm looking for Dr. Harper. He's out on a call. Clara stood. Can I help you with something? The man's eyes traveled over her, assessing. You must be the Morrison woman, the one everyone's talking about. Clara kept her expression neutral. I'm Clara Morrison, Dr. Harper's assistant. Assistant. The man smiled thinly. Is that what we're calling it? Clara's hands curled into fists behind her back. That's what it is. Can I help you with something, or are you just here to make insinuations? Something shifted in the man's expression. Surprise, maybe. I'm Councilman Thaddeus Callahan. He paused, watching for her reaction. Jasper's brother. Clara's stomach dropped, but she kept her voice level. I gathered that from the family resemblance. You've got a sharp tongue. I've been told. Councilman Callahan moved further into the clinic, examining the organized shelves. The neat filing system, the evidence of Clara's weeks of work. My brother says you deceived him, showed up with children he never agreed to accept. Your brother ignored 3 letters explaining my situation. Clara's voice came out harder than she intended. Any deception was willful blindness on his part, not lies on mine. Strong words for a woman in your position. What position would that be? Stranded. Callahan turned to face her. Penniless. Dependent on the charity of strangers. Living under the same roof as an unmarried man. There are people in this town who think you should be run out on a rail. There are people in every town who think that about someone. Clara didn't flinch. I've learned not to care much about what people think. That's obvious. His eyes narrowed. But caring might be wise. The town council has influence over many things. Medical licensing, business permits, housing arrangements. The threat was clear. Clara felt cold anger settle in her chest. Is there something specific you want, Councilman? Or are you just here to intimidate me? I'm here to assess a situation my brother has complained about repeatedly. Callahan's voice dropped. A woman of dubious character working closely with the town's only doctor, using his resources, living in his mother's house. The appearances are troubling. Appearances can be whatever you want them to be. Clara stepped closer, refusing to be cowed. The reality is that I file papers, organize supplies, and assist with medical procedures. That's all. If your brother or anyone else sees something improper in honest work, the problem is with their imagination, not my conduct. For a long moment, Callahan simply stared at her. Then he laughed. You've got spine, Mrs. Morrison. I'll give you that. He moved toward the door. My brother underestimated you. I won't make the same mistake. Is that a threat? It's an observation. He paused at the threshold. This town has standards, Mrs. Morrison. Social expectations. Women like you either learn to meet them or get crushed by them. I suggest you think carefully about which fate you prefer. He left. Clara stood in the empty clinic, her heart pounding. The door from the boarding house opened, and Ida appeared. I heard voices. Who was that? Councilman Callahan. Clara's voice came out steady despite her fear. Jasper's brother. Thaddeus. Ida's expression darkened. That snake. What did he want? To threaten me, I think, though he was polite about it. That's how the Callahans operate. Velvet gloves over iron fists. Ida moved to Clara's side. What did you tell him? That I don't care what he thinks, that I'm here to work. Clara paused. That if he sees something improper in honest labor, the problem is his imagination. Ida's face broke into a smile. You said that to Thaddeus Callahan. Was that wrong? That was magnificent. Ida squeezed her arm. I've wanted to say something like that to him for 20 years. He won't let it go. He threatened the medical practice, said the council has influence over licensing and permits. Let him try. Ida's voice went fierce. My son has treated half this town at one time or another. Every rancher, every shopkeeper, every crying baby at 3 a.m. Thaddeus Callahan can threaten all he wants. The people who matter know who actually helps them. Clara wanted to believe it, but she'd seen what powerful men could do when their pride was wounded. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. That night, Clara told Nate about the visit. They sat in the clinic's back room while the twins slept. Lamplight cast long shadows across the walls. Thaddeus came here. Nate's jaw tightened. To threaten you. To assess the situation, he said. But yes, basically a threat. That sanctimonious bastard. Nate stood pacing. He's been looking for ways to undermine this practice for years. Now he thinks he's found one. Because of me. No, because of who I hired. Nate stopped pacing. Don't take this on yourself, Clara. Thaddeus hates me for reasons that have nothing to do with you. What reasons? Nate hesitated. Then, his son died, 3 years ago. Accident while hunting. Thaddeus wanted me to perform surgery that might have saved him. I refused. Why? Because it wouldn't have saved him. The injuries were too severe. The surgery would only have prolonged his suffering. Nate's voice went flat. Thaddeus never forgave me for that. He thinks I let his boy die because I was too cowardly to try. Clara absorbed this. So hiring me gave him ammunition he's been waiting for. It gave him an excuse. That's different. Nate sat back down close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Clara, I don't regret hiring you, not for a second. You've made this practice better, more organized, more efficient, more... He stopped. More what? More alive. The word hung in the air. Before you came, I was just going through motions, treating patients, filing papers, eating meals I didn't taste. You reminded me that this work can be more than duty. It can be purpose. Clara felt warmth spread through her chest. That's a lot of pressure to put on a filing system. Nate laughed. Actually laughed, the sound startled out of him. I suppose it is. He met her eyes. But it's true anyway. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The twins stirred in their cradle. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Whatever Thaddeus does, Nate said finally, we face it together. All right. Clara nodded. All right. And Clara? Yes. Thank you. For standing up to him. For not backing down. Nate's voice softened. Most people are afraid of the Callahans. You looked Thaddeus in the eye and told him his imagination was the problem. Clara felt heat creep up her neck. I was terrified the whole time. I know. Nate smiled. That's what made it brave. He stood, offering his hand to help her up. This time, when their fingers touched, neither of them let go immediately. Good night, Clara. Good night, Nate. She walked back to her room with her heart beating strangely fast and his words echoing in her head. More alive. She'd come here expecting survival. She was finding something else entirely. The attack came 6 weeks after Clara arrived in Silver Creek. She was walking back from delivering medicine to old Mrs. Patterson when she heard crying from behind the feed store. High, frightened sobs. A child in distress. Clara stopped. Listened. Hello? Is someone there? The crying continued. Small. Terrified. Clara moved toward the sound without thinking. Behind the building, she found a girl of maybe 8, huddled against the wall. Her face streaked with tears, her knee bleeding through a torn stocking. Sweetheart, what happened? The girl looked up with wide, frightened eyes. I fell, and Mama said stay at the store, but there was a mean man yelling, and I got scared and ran, and now I can't find her, and my knee hurts, and... Fresh sobs cut off the words. Clara knelt beside her. Let me see that knee. It was a bad scrape. Dirty. Already starting to swell. I work with the doctor, Clara said gently. I can clean this up and help you find your mama. Will you come with me? The girl nodded, sniffling. Clara helped her stand. The child couldn't walk well on the injured leg, so Clara lifted her, carrying her the 3 blocks to the clinic. She'd just finished cleaning the scrape when the clinic door exploded open. How dare you! A woman stood in the entrance face, white with rage and terror. Clara recognized her from church. Elena Garcia, married to a ranch hand mother to 3 children. Mrs. Garcia, I found your daughter behind the feed store. She was hurt and frightened, so I... You took my child. Elena's voice cracked. Without permission, without telling anyone. Mama, I fell down, and she helped. Be quiet, Lucia. Elena grabbed her daughter's hand, yanking her away from Clara. You stay away from my family. You hear me. Stay away. I was only trying to help. Her knee was bleeding and she was alone. She wouldn't have been alone if you hadn't taken her. Elena's eyes blazed. I know what you are. Everyone knows. Living with that doctor pretending to be respectable. You don't touch my children. Ever. The words hit Clara like physical blows. Mrs. Garcia, please, if you'll just let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Elena pulled Lucia toward the door. You're not a nurse. You're not anything. You're just some widow playing house with a man who should know better. The door slammed behind them. Clara stood frozen in the empty clinic. Her hands trembled. Her chest felt tight. She'd only wanted to help. The connecting door opened. Ida appeared, her face troubled. I heard shouting. What happened? Clara couldn't make her voice work. She pointed toward the door. Elena Garcia, she finally managed. Her daughter was hurt. I helped her. And Elena... She swallowed hard. She accused me of taking Lucia without permission. Ida's expression darkened. Elena Garcia is a frightened woman married to a man who loses his temper when he drinks. She sees threats everywhere. She called me... Clara stopped. The words were too ugly to repeat. I can imagine what she called you. Ida moved closer. Clara, this isn't about you. It's about fear and gossip, and small-minded people who can't see past their own prejudices. It felt pretty personal. It always does. Ida took her hands. But you know the truth. I know it. Nate knows it. Nate, that has to be enough. Clara wanted to believe her, but she'd seen Elena's face, the contempt, the certainty, and she knew this wasn't over. The story spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. By evening, half the town had heard that Clara Morrison took a child without permission. By morning, the other half had added their own embellishments. She'd lured the girl away. She'd tried to keep her. She'd refused to return her until forced. None of it was true. None of it mattered. Clara went to the general store for supplies and felt eyes following her everywhere. Whispers stopped when she approached. Conversations resumed when she passed. Vivian Fletcher smiled at her with poisoned sweetness. Heard you had some trouble yesterday, Mrs. Morrison. Something about a child. I helped an injured girl find her mother. Is that what we're calling it? Vivian's voice carried to every corner of the store. Funny how helping always seems to get you in trouble. Clara paid for her supplies and left without responding. There was nothing she could say that would change minds already made up. Outside, she nearly collided with Margaret Cole. Clara, Margaret's face was troubled. I heard about Elena Garcia. Are you all right? I'm fine. You're lying, but I understand why. Margaret fell into step beside her. Listen to me. What happened yesterday, it's being twisted into something it wasn't. The Callahans are behind it. Clara stopped walking. What do you mean? Elena Garcia's husband works for Jasper Callahan. Lost his job last month when the mercantile cut staff. Jasper rehired him 2 days ago. Margaret's voice dropped. Right before Elena happened to lose track of her daughter in a crowded store. Right before you happened to find her. Clara felt cold spread through her chest. You're saying it was planned. I'm saying it's convenient. Margaret's eyes were hard. The Callahans want you gone, Clara. They've been looking for ammunition since you stood up to Thaddeus. Now they have it. But I didn't do anything wrong? That doesn't matter to people like them. What matters is what they can make people believe. Margaret touched her arm. Be careful. Whatever comes next, be ready. Clara walked back to the boarding house with lead in her stomach. Whatever came next. She didn't have to wait long to find out. 3 days later, Councilman Callahan returned to the clinic. This time, he wasn't alone. 2 other men accompanied him, council members Clara recognized from church. They stood in the clinic entrance like judges at a trial. Dr. Harper. Thaddeus's voice was formal, cold. We need to discuss a serious matter. Nate emerged from the examination room, his expression wary. What matter? The council has received a formal complaint from Mrs. Elena Garcia regarding your assistant's conduct with her daughter. Thaddeus pulled out a folded paper. We're here to investigate. Investigate what? Clara stepped forward. I helped an injured child, that's all. You removed a child from her mother's vicinity without permission. Thaddeus didn't look at her. That's a serious breach of appropriate conduct. The child was bleeding and alone. I brought her to the clinic for treatment. Without seeking parental consent. Her mother wasn't there. I didn't know who she was or where to find her. Mrs. Morrison. One of the other council members spoke, older, gray-haired, voice like gravel. The issue isn't what you intended, it's what you did. Taking a child without authorization raises serious questions about judgment and propriety. She's 8 years old with a bleeding knee. And you're an untrained woman with no medical credentials working in a position that requires both. Thaddeus's voice sharpened. The council has concerns about whether someone with such poor judgment should be permitted to continue in a medical capacity. Nate stepped between Clara and the council members. This is absurd. Clara followed basic emergency protocol. Any decent person would have done the same. Perhaps. But any decent person isn't living under your roof while working in your clinic. Thaddeus smiled thinly. The appearances, Dr. Harper. The appearances are troubling. To hell with appearances. Language like that won't help your case. Thaddeus turned to address all of them. The council will be holding a public meeting tomorrow evening to discuss community standards and professional conduct. Mrs. Morrison's continued employment will be on the agenda. You can't do this. Nate's voice went dangerous. You can't put someone's livelihood on trial because of gossip and prejudice. We can discuss community concerns in a public forum. That's entirely within our authority. Thaddeus moved toward the door. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, the town hall. He left with his colleagues. Clara stood in the silence that followed, her whole body trembling. This is my fault. Her voice came out small. I should have found Elena before treating Lucia. You should have let a child bleed in an alley. Nate's jaw was tight. Don't you dare blame yourself for this, Clara. The Callahans orchestrated the whole thing. They've been waiting for an excuse, and they manufactured one. What do we do? Nate was quiet for a moment. Then, we fight. We go to that meeting tomorrow and tell the truth. We bring people who've seen your work, who know your character. We don't let them win. And if they win anyway? The question hung in the air. Nate didn't answer, because they both knew there was no good answer to give. Clara didn't sleep that night. She lay awake listening to the twins breathe, watching moonlight move across the ceiling, turning the same thoughts over and over. She'd come to Silver Creek seeking safety, found rejection instead, built something from the ashes work-purpose connection. Now it was all being threatened by a manufactured scandal and powerful men with wounded pride. She thought about what losing this job would mean. No income, no place to stay, back to $4.37 and 2 babies depending on her completely. She thought about Nate, about the partnership they'd built, about the way he looked at her sometimes like she was the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. She thought about Elena Garcia's face twisted with fear and contempt. And she thought about Jasper Callahan watching from across the town square while her world collapsed around her. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, Clara made a decision. She'd fight. Of course she'd fight. But she'd fight smart. And if fighting meant losing on her terms instead of theirs, she'd do that too. The town hall meeting drew a crowd. Clara entered with Nate on one side and Ida on the other. Margaret Cole was already there, seated near the front with a determined expression. The council members sat at a long table facing the crowd. Thaddeus Callahan in the center. Jasper seated in the front row, his face carefully neutral. Clara found a seat and clasped her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. This meeting is called to order. Thaddeus's voice carried through the room. We're here to discuss concerns about professional conduct and community standards specifically regarding Mrs. Clara Morrison's employment at Dr. Harper's medical practice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several citizens have raised questions about Mrs. Morrison's judgment, her qualifications, and the propriety of her living arrangements. Thaddeus paused dramatically. We will hear testimony and determine appropriate action. Vivian Fletcher was the first to speak. I've seen her around town, bold as brass, walking like she owns the place. A woman in her situation should show more humility. Others followed. Not many, but enough. Whispers about the boarding house, insinuations about Clara's relationship with Nate, questions about why a widow with 2 babies would answer a mail-order bride advertisement in the first place. Each word felt like a cut. Clara kept her face neutral, kept her hands still, kept breathing. When the accusations paused, Nate stood. "May I speak?" Thaddeus nodded, his expression predatory. "Clara Morrison has been working in my clinic for 6 weeks. Nate's voice was steady, controlled. "In that time, she's reorganized 8 years of chaotic records into a functioning system. She's assisted with emergency procedures that saved lives. She's demonstrated intelligence, compassion, and dedication that surpasses anyone I've previously employed." "That's all very touching," Thaddeus interrupted. "But it doesn't address the concerns about judgment, about taking a child without—" "She helped an injured girl who was lost and frightened." Nate's voice hardened. "That's not poor judgment. That's basic human decency." The mother disagrees. "The mother wasn't there." "And whose fault is that?" The question hung in the air. Clara saw Jasper smile slightly. Margaret Cole stood. "I'd like to speak." Thaddeus looked annoyed but nodded. "I've known Clara Morrison for 5 weeks," Margaret said. "In that time, I've watched her work harder than anyone in this town. I've watched her face gossip and judgment with dignity, and I've watched certain people," she looked directly at Jasper, "do everything possible to tear her down because she didn't crawl away when they wanted her to." "Mrs. Cole, I'm not finished." Margaret's voice carried. "Clara Morrison isn't on trial here for what she did. She's on trial for who she is, a woman who refused to be broken by a man who threw her away like garbage. That's what really bothers some people. Not her judgment, her spine." Applause broke out from several corners of the room. Margaret sat down, but Clara could see Thaddeus's face, could see the calculation there. He wasn't going to lose. Not publicly. Not here. "These character testimonials are touching," Thaddeus said, "but they don't change the facts. Mrs. Morrison took a child without parental consent. She has no formal medical training, and her living situation raises legitimate questions about—" "Stop." Clara's voice cut through the room. She stood, her legs unsteady, but her voice clear. "I'll make this easier for everyone." Nate turned toward her. "Clara." "No." She held up her hand. "Let me finish." The room went silent. "I came to Silver Creek 2 months ago, expecting to start a new life. Instead, I was publicly humiliated by a man who decided my children made me worthless." She looked at Jasper. "I didn't break. I found work. I built something. I proved I was more than what he saw." She turned to address the whole room. "But I'm tired of fighting. Tired of proving myself to people who've already decided I'm guilty of something. Tired of watching good people defend me against attacks that should never have happened in the first place." "Clara, don't do this." Nate's voice was rough. "I'm resigning." Clara's voice didn't waver. "From the clinic. Effective immediately. That should satisfy the council's concerns about propriety and professional conduct." Murmurs erupted through the room. Thaddeus looked stunned, then satisfied. "That's very sensible, Mrs. Morrison. We appreciate your—" "I'm not finished." Clara's eyes blazed. "I'm resigning because it's the right thing to do for Dr. Harper's practice. Not because I did anything wrong. Not because I'm guilty of the things you're implying. And not because you've won." She turned to face Jasper directly. "You threw me away because I had children. Because I was inconvenient. Because I didn't fit the fantasy you'd built in your head." Her voice dropped. "But I'm still standing. I'm still here. And every day I survive in this town is proof that your judgment was wrong." Jasper's face had gone red, his hands clenched on his knees. "You watch yourself, Mrs. Morrison." "I've been watching myself for 6 months. I'm tired of it." Clara lifted her chin. "I'll find other work. Build something else. And you'll still be the man who threw away a woman because she had the audacity to love her children. She walked out of the town hall. Behind her, chaos erupted, voices rising, arguments breaking out. Clara didn't stop. She walked into the frozen night, her breath fogging in the cold air, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. She made it halfway to the boarding house before the tears came. Not soft tears, not quiet ones. Great heaving sobs that racked her whole body. 6 months of grief and fear and exhaustion pouring out in the darkness where no one could see. She'd given up. She'd lost. Clara. Nate's voice. Behind her. She tried to wipe her face. Go back inside. They need you to. I don't care what they need. He caught up to her, his breath forming clouds in the cold. Clara, what you did in there. I quit. I gave up. I let them win. No. His hands caught her shoulders. You stood up to the most powerful men in this town and told them the truth. That's not giving up. That's courage. Courage would have been staying, fighting. Courage was walking away on your terms instead of theirs. His grip tightened. You didn't give them the satisfaction of watching you be dragged out. You chose to leave. That's different. Clara's voice broke. What am I supposed to do now I have 2 babies and no job, and everyone in town thinks I don't care what everyone thinks. Nate's voice was fierce. I care what's true, and what's true is that you're the bravest person I've ever met. I don't feel brave. Brave people never do. He pulled her closer. Clara, listen to me. This isn't over. The Callahans won a battle, not a war. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Not here. Not with them controlling everything. Then we'll make one. His hands moved to her face, tilting it up to meet his eyes. Together. I'm not letting you face this alone. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that there was still hope. But standing in the frozen darkness, her career in ruins, her reputation destroyed, it was hard to see any path forward. I should go inside, she whispered. The twins will wake soon. Clara. Nate didn't release her. What I said at the meeting, about your work, your dedication, I meant every word. I know. But there's something else I didn't say. His voice dropped. Something I should have said a long time ago. Clara's heart stuttered. Nate, I love you. The words hung in the frozen air. I've loved you since the day you stood in that town square and refused to break, since you took chaos and made it order, since you held down a screaming boy while I set his bone and never once flinched. His thumb brushed across her cheek. I love you, Clara Morrison. Whatever happens next, I need you to know that. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This is terrible timing, she whispered. I know. I just lost my job, my reputation, everything I've built here. I know. People already think that we're. I know. His forehead touched hers. And I don't care. Let them think what they want. Let the Callahans scheme and gossip. None of it matters. The only thing that matters is what's real. What's real? This. He kissed her. Soft. Gentle. A promise more than a demand. Clara kissed him back, tasting salt from her tears, and cold from the winter air, and something else entirely. Hope. Fragile. Dangerous. But real. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was shaking. Not from cold. That was terrible timing, Nate agreed. I should have waited. Should have found a better moment. There wouldn't have been a better moment. Clara's voice was stronger now. This was the moment we needed. So what happens now? Clara thought about the question, about the ruins of her plans, about the road ahead. Now I find another way to survive. She straightened her shoulders. And we figure out what this, she gestured between them, actually means. It means I'm not giving up on you. Even if it costs you. Especially then. Nate took her hand. Come inside. It's freezing. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. They walked back to the boarding house together. Clara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Didn't know how she'd support her children, or rebuild her life, or navigate the complications of loving a man she technically no longer worked for. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She wasn't broken. Not by Jasper Callahan. Not by the council. Not by any of them. And tomorrow she'd start proving it all over again. The morning after the town hall meeting, Margaret Cole appeared at the boarding house door. "Get dressed," she said without preamble. "We need to talk." Clara followed her to the millinery shop, confused but too exhausted to argue. Inside, Margaret poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from Clara. "I have a proposition." "I'm not sure I can afford propositions right now." "Hear me out." Margaret leaned forward. "I've been thinking about expanding my business, opening a second location. Women's goods, children's clothing, fabrics, and notions. Everything the ladies of Silver Creek need but can't find unless they order from Denver." Clara blinked. "That sounds ambitious." "It is, and I can't do it alone." Margaret met her eyes. "I need a partner. Someone smart, organized, someone who knows how to build something from nothing." Clara's heart began to beat faster. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a partnership." Margaret smiled. "You'd manage the new shop, handle inventory, sales, customer relations. I'd provide the startup capital and business guidance. We'd split profits 60-40 with your share increasing as the business grows." "Margaret, I don't know anything about running a shop." "You organized a medical practice in 6 weeks. You handled blood and broken bones and screaming patients." Margaret's voice was firm. "Running a shop will be easy by comparison." Clara felt tears threatening again. "Why would you do this? You barely know me." "I know enough." Margaret reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I know what it's like to be new here, to be judged before you've had a chance to prove yourself. 8 years ago, this town told me I'd never succeed. I proved them wrong. And now you're giving me the same chance. I'm giving you a hand up. What you do with it is up to you." Margaret sat back. "What do you say?" Clara thought about Jasper Callahan's smug face, about Thaddeus and his council, and all the people who'd decided she was worthless. And she thought about her twins, about building something that couldn't be taken away because some man decided she was inconvenient. "Yes," she said. "When do we start?" Margaret's smile widened. "Right now." The shop took 3 weeks to set up. Clara worked from dawn until the twins demanded attention, then again after they slept. Scrubbing floors, organizing shelves, learning inventory management from Margaret's patient instruction. She learned fast. Had to. "You've got a gift for this," Margaret said one afternoon, watching Clara arrange a display of children's clothing. "Most people see merchandise. You see what women actually need. I see what I needed and couldn't find." Clara adjusted a small dress. "When I was pregnant with the twins, I spent weeks searching for fabric soft enough for their skin. Everything was rough wool or scratchy cotton. If I'd had a shop like this..." "That's exactly why this will work." Margaret nodded approvingly. "You understand the customers because you were one." Clara stepped back, surveying her work. "It still doesn't feel real. 2 months ago I was selling my wedding ring to pay debts. Now I'm opening a business. Life changes fast. So people keep telling me." Margaret laughed. "You'll get used to it, or you won't and you'll just keep being surprised. Either way, the work gets done." The work did get done. Clara named the shop Morrison's Mercantile for Ladies and Children. Margaret had suggested something fancier, but Clara wanted her name on the door, wanted people to know exactly who was building something new from the ashes of their judgment. Opening day arrived on a bitter March morning. Clara stood behind the counter in a dress she'd sewn herself deep blue cotton with careful embroidery at the collar and tried to slow her racing heart. What if no one comes? Ida squeezed her hand. People will come. What if the Callahans have scared everyone away? Then they'll come eventually when they realize you have what they need. Ida's voice was firm. Stop borrowing trouble, Clara. Today is for celebrating. The door opened. Sarah Henderson walked in, baby on her hip, two older children trailing behind. I heard you were opening today. Sarah smiled warmly. Wouldn't miss it. Clara's throat tightened. Sarah, thank you. Don't thank me. I'm here to spend money. Sarah moved toward the children's section. My boys need shirts and I've been waiting weeks for somewhere decent to buy them. More customers followed. Jim Hollister's wife, old Mrs. Patterson, leaning heavily on her cane. Women Clara recognized from church, from the general store, from passing on the street. Not everyone. Vivian Fletcher stayed away naturally. Elena Garcia didn't appear. The women who whispered loudest kept their distance. But enough came. Enough to make Clara believe this might actually work. By afternoon, she'd sold 3 dresses, 7 yards of fabric, a dozen buttons, and more ribbon than she'd expected to stock. Margaret arrived to check on her. How's it going? Clara showed her the ledger. Better than I hoped. Good. Margaret's expression grew serious. Because Jasper Callahan was asking questions at the feed store this morning. Wanted to know who our suppliers are, what our arrangements look like. Clara's stomach dropped. He's looking for ways to interfere. Probably. But he can't do much. Our suppliers are in Denver outside his influence. Margaret met her eyes. He'll try other angles, though. Be ready. I'm always ready. I know. Margaret smiled slightly. That's why I partnered with you. Nate stopped by that evening after the shop closed. They'd been careful since the night of the town hall meeting. No public displays, no obvious affection. Just 2 people who happened to see each other at the boarding house, who happened to talk sometimes, who happened to share meals. But in private, when no one was watching. Congratulations. Nate handed her a small bundle. For the shop. Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a medical text, the same one he'd used to teach her about frontier plants and their properties. I know you're not working at the clinic anymore, he said, but I thought maybe you'd still want to learn. Clara felt tears threatening. Nate? You don't have to. It's just, I want to. She clutched the book against her chest. I miss it. The learning. The work. I miss you. His voice dropped. The clinic feels empty without you. You hired a replacement. Ellen Marks. She's competent. He paused. She's not you. Clara set down the book and moved closer. How are you really? Tired, busy. Nate's hand found hers. Missing the best assistant I ever had. Just the assistant. No. His fingers interlaced with hers. Not just the assistant. They stood like that for a moment. Close but not touching beyond their joined hands. The careful distance they maintained because the gossip hadn't died, and giving it fuel would only make things harder. Margaret says Jasper's asking questions about the shop. Nate's jaw tightened. I heard. He's been making noise at the council too, suggesting new regulations for businesses run by women. Of course he has. The other council members aren't interested. Most of them have wives who shop at Margaret's store. Nate's thumb traced circles on her palm. He's losing influence, Clara. Slowly, but it's happening. Not slowly enough. These things take time. I'm tired of waiting for time to fix things. Clara pulled her hand free, frustration bubbling up. Every day I walk through this town I feel them watching, judging, waiting for me to fail. Then don't fail. Nate's voice was simple, direct. Keep building. Keep succeeding. Eventually success speaks louder than gossip. That's what Margaret says. Margaret's a smart woman. He caught her hand again. So are you. Smarter than anyone in this town gives you credit for. Clara wanted to believe him. Most days she did. But some nights lying awake listening to the twins breathe, she wondered if she'd ever truly escape the shadow of Jasper Callahan's rejection. The first major test came 2 weeks later. Clara was helping a customer when Elena Garcia walked into the shop, the woman who'd accused her of taking Lucia, the woman whose words had helped drive her from the clinic. Clara's whole body went rigid. Mrs. Morrison. Elena's voice was quiet, uncertain. Mrs. Garcia. Clara kept her tone neutral. Can I help you with something? Elena glanced around the shop, clearly uncomfortable. I need fabric for my daughter's dress. Her communion is next month and... The white cotton is on the far wall, third shelf from the bottom. Elena didn't move. Mrs. Morrison, She stopped, started again. What I said, at the clinic, and after. Clara waited. I was wrong. The words came out in a rush. I was scared and angry, and Miguel, my husband, he said things, and I believed them, and then everything happened so fast, and I never meant... You never meant to destroy my reputation. Elena flinched. I didn't know it would go that far. I just wanted... I don't know what I wanted. To blame someone. To make sense of why my daughter was hurt and scared. Clara studied the woman in front of her, saw the shame in her eyes, the genuine distress. She thought about holding on to anger, about nursing the wound, keeping it fresh. She thought about Ida's words. Fear makes people do terrible things. The white cotton is on the far wall, Clara said again. Third shelf. I also have some lovely lace that would make a beautiful communion veil. Elena's eyes widened. You're helping me. I'm running a business. You're a customer. Clara moved toward the fabric section. Unless you'd rather shop somewhere else. No. Elena followed quickly. No, Thank you. I don't deserve... What you deserve isn't for me to decide. Clara pulled down a bolt of white cotton. But I'm not going to punish your daughter because her mother made a mistake. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. Clara measured out fabric with steady hands. Maybe next time you'll think twice before believing the worst about someone you don't know. I will. I promise I will. Clara finished the transaction. Elena left with her fabric and her guilt and her second chance. When the door closed, Clara's hands started shaking. She gripped the counter and breathed. In, out, in. The shop's back door opened. Margaret appeared. I saw Elena Garcia leave. Are you all right? She apologized. Did she? Said she didn't mean for things to go so far. That she was scared and believed things she shouldn't have. Clara's voice cracked slightly. I sold her fabric for her daughter's communion dress. Margaret was quiet for a moment. That took strength. It took everything I had not to throw her out. But you didn't. Margaret moved closer. You treated her like any other customer. You took the high road. I'm tired of the high road. Clara's eyes burned. I want to be angry. I want to scream at everyone who made my life hell for the past 2 months. I want... What do you want? Clara thought about it. Really thought. I want them to see me, she whispered. Not the gossip, not the scandal, just me. Clara Morrison. Someone who works hard and loves her children and deserves to be here as much as anyone else. Then keep working. Margaret's hand settled on her shoulder. Keep showing up. Keep being the person you actually are instead of who they decided you were. And that's enough. It's everything. Margaret squeezed gently. Trust me, Clara. I've been where you are. It gets better. Clara wanted to believe her. Some days she almost did. Spring crept into Silver Creek slowly. The snow melted. The roads turned to mud. The shop grew busier as women emerged from winter hibernation eager for new fabric and fresh goods. Clara fell into a rhythm. Work in the morning, tend the twins at midday, work again until evening. Study Nate's medical text at night, keeping her knowledge sharp even though she'd never use it again. Or so she thought. The emergency came on a Sunday afternoon. Clara was closing the shop when she heard shouting from the street. She stepped outside and saw a crowd gathering near the livery stable. What happened? Horse kicked a man. Someone she didn't recognize. Doctors out on a call won't be back for hours. Clara's blood ran cold. She pushed through the crowd and found Miguel Garcia lying on the ground, his face gray with pain. His leg bent at an angle that made her stomach lurch. Elena knelt beside him, sobbing. "Someone help! Please, someone help!" Clara's medical training screamed at her. The leg needed to be immobilized before it swelled. The patient needed assessment for internal injuries. Every minute wasted was a minute closer to permanent damage. "I can help." Elena looked up, eyes wild. I worked with Dr. Harper for 6 weeks." Clara was already kneeling, her hands moving to assess Miguel's leg. "I've seen this before. I know what to do." "But you're not a doctor." "No, I'm not. But I'm here and your husband's leg is broken, and if we don't act now, he might lose it." Elena's face crumpled. "Do it. Whatever you need to do." Clara took control. "I need boards for a splint. 2 feet long, sturdy. Someone get rope or bandages, and I need 2 strong men to help hold him." People scattered to obey. Clara examined Miguel carefully. The break was clean, she could feel it through the skin. Bad, but not as bad as it could have been. "Miguel, can you hear me?" "Sí." His voice was thin with pain. "It hurts." "I know. We're going to splint it so you can be moved. It's going to hurt worse before it gets better." "Do it." The supplies arrived. Clara worked quickly, splitting the leg with practiced movements she'd learned watching Nate. Miguel screamed when she positioned the boards. Elena held his hand and wept. Clara didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. 15 minutes later, Miguel was stabilized enough to be carried to the clinic on a makeshift stretcher. Clara walked beside him, monitoring for signs of shock. By the time Nate returned from his call, Miguel was resting in the clinic's examination room, and Clara was washing blood from her hands. "What happened?" Clara explained briefly. Nate examined Miguel, his expression growing more impressed with each observation. "You splinted this perfectly," he said finally. "The alignment is exact. If I'd done it myself, I couldn't have done better. I had a good teacher." Nate looked at her. Really looked. "You saved his leg, Clara. Maybe his life. If the shock had set in before treatment, I did what needed doing. You did what a trained medical professional would have done." His voice dropped. "You're wasted in that shop. The shop is mine. No one can take it away from me." "I know." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "But don't you ever wonder what you could have been if the Callahans hadn't—" "Wondering doesn't change anything." Clara dried her hands. "I am what I am now. That has to be enough." Elena appeared in the doorway. "Mrs. Morrison, I don't know how to thank you. After everything I said, everything I did, you still—" "I helped someone who needed it." Clara met her eyes. "That's what people should do. But I don't deserve—" "No one talks about what they deserve." Clara's voice softened slightly. "What matters is what we do. You made a mistake. Maybe today things started balancing out." Elena broke down crying. Clara let her standing awkwardly while the woman sobbed out apologies and gratitude and promises to make things right. "Tell people," Clara said finally. "Tell them what happened today. Not for me, for every woman who's been judged before she had a chance to prove herself. That's how you make things right." Elena nodded fiercely. "I will. I swear I will." She kept her promise. Within a week, Half of Silver Creek had heard how Clara Morrison saved Miguel Garcia's leg, how she'd stepped up when no one else could, how she'd helped the very family that had worked to destroy her. The gossip shifted, slowly at first, then faster. She's not what people said. Maybe we were wrong about her. Did you hear what she did for the Garcia boy? Clara noticed the change. More customers at the shop, fewer hostile stares, people nodding to her on the street instead of crossing to avoid her. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, more like re-evaluation. Margaret noticed too. The tide's turning. Is it enough? It's a start. Margaret smiled. Elena Garcia told Vivian Fletcher she was a bitter old cat who should be ashamed of herself, in the middle of church. Clara couldn't help laughing. She didn't. She absolutely did, right there in front of God and everyone. Margaret's eyes gleamed. Vivian hasn't shown her face since. I almost feel bad for her. Don't. She earned every bit of it. Margaret paused. There's something else. Jasper Callahan closed his mercantile last week. Clara stopped laughing. What? Business has been dropping for months. People started going to Denver for their goods, or to our shop. Margaret's voice was satisfied. Turns out when you treat customers badly, they eventually stop coming. He'll blame me. He'll blame everyone but himself. That's what men like him do. Margaret shrugged. But blaming doesn't change facts. He's finished Clara. The mercantile was everything he had. Clara should have felt triumphant, should have celebrated the downfall of the man who'd thrown her away like garbage. Instead, she felt something closer to pity. He must be devastated. Probably. Margaret studied her. Does that change anything? Clara thought about her first day in Silver Creek, the frozen square, the humiliation, the moment she'd believed her life was over. No, she said finally. It doesn't change anything, but it doesn't make me happy either. That's because you're a decent person. Margaret squeezed her arm. The decent ones never enjoy watching people suffer, even people who deserve it. Maybe especially people who deserve it. Maybe. Margaret headed toward the door. I'll see you tomorrow. Try to get some rest, you've been working too hard. Clara locked up the shop and walked back to the boarding house. The twins were sleeping when she arrived. Ida was knitting by the fire. Nate's in the clinic, Ida said without looking up. He asked me to send you in when you got back. Clara found him at his desk surrounded by papers. You wanted to see me? Close the door. She did. Something in his voice made her heart beat faster. Nate stood moving around the desk toward her. I've been thinking, about us, about what comes next. Nate, let me finish. He took her hands. The gossip is dying down. Your business is thriving. The Callahans are losing their grip on this town. All true. So maybe it's time to stop hiding. Clara's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean I'm tired of pretending we're just friends. I'm tired of careful distance and private conversations and worrying about what people think. His grip tightened. I want to marry you, Clara. Properly. Publicly. I want everyone in Silver Creek to know that you're mine and I'm yours. The gossip will explode. Let it. His eyes were fierce. I don't care anymore. The people who matter already support us. The rest can go hang. Clara wanted to say yes. Every fiber of her being screamed to accept, but fear held her back. What if it ruins everything? The practice, the shop, everything we've built? It won't. You don't know that. I know that I love you. Nate's voice softened. I know that I've loved you since the day you arrived in this town. I know that every day I'm not with you feels like waste. He pressed his forehead to hers. I know that whatever comes, I'd rather face it with you than without you. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I've been burned before. I trusted Robert and he gambled away everything. I trusted Jasper's advertisement and he threw me away. I'm not Robert. I'm not Jasper. Nate's hands moved to frame her face. I'm the man who watched you build something from nothing, who saw you save a man's leg with knowledge you weren't supposed to have anymore, who loves your children like they were my own. You love the twins. How could I not? They're part of you. He smiled slightly. They've got your stubbornness, your determination, and Lily's got your eyes. Clara laughed through her tears. They're 6 months old. They don't have my anything yet. They have everything. His thumb brushed her cheek. Say yes, Clara. Let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the risk. She looked at him, this man who'd offered her shelter when she had nothing, who'd taught her skills she still used, who'd stood beside her through gossip and scandal and everything the Callahans could throw at them. Yes, she whispered. Nate kissed her, deep and thorough and utterly without restraint. When they finally broke apart, both breathless Clara felt something settle inside her. Not safety exactly, not certainty, but something close to faith. When? She asked. As soon as possible. Next month. Next week. Tomorrow if you'd agree. Clara laughed. We need time to plan, to tell people. 2 weeks. Nate's eyes blazed with determination. I'm not waiting longer than that. 2 weeks. Clara nodded. But we do this right. A proper wedding. A public declaration. No sneaking around. Agreed. He pulled her close again. We'll show this whole town what real partnership looks like. Clara rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. 2 months ago, she'd arrived in Silver Creek expecting one future. She'd found something entirely different. Better. Harder. Real. And in 2 weeks, she'd stand in front of everyone who'd judged her and declare that she'd won. Not over them. Over the fear that had kept her small. Over the doubt that had whispered she wasn't enough. Over the grief that had threatened to drown her. She'd survived it all, and now, finally, she was ready to live. News of the engagement spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. Clara heard the whispers everywhere she went. Some approving, some scandalized. Most just curious about what would happen next. People are talking, Ida said over breakfast the morning after Nate announced their engagement to his mother. Let them talk. Clara fed Lily a spoonful of mashed potatoes. I'm done caring. That's not what I meant. Ida's eyes crinkled with warmth. They're talking about how you saved Miguel Garcia, about how you stood up to the Callahans, about how maybe they were wrong about you all along. Clara paused, spoon halfway to Lily's mouth. They said that, some of them, the ones who matter. Ida reached over to squeeze her hand. The tide really is turning, Clara. You've earned this. I don't feel like I've earned anything. That's because you're still expecting the other shoe to drop. Ida's voice gentled. But sometimes, dear, the other shoe doesn't drop. Sometimes things just get better. Clara wanted to believe her. She almost did. The wedding preparations consumed the next 2 weeks. Margaret insisted on handling the dress. I've been making wedding gowns for 15 years. You're not wearing something store-bought. I can't afford. Consider it a gift, from one stubborn woman to another. Margaret's needle flashed through cream-colored silk. Besides, I want everyone in Silver Creek to see what I can do. Best advertisement possible. Sarah Henderson volunteered to handle the food. You helped bring my daughter into this world. The least I can do is bake your wedding cake. Even Elena Garcia appeared at the shop one afternoon, eyes downcast. I want to help. With the flowers. Or decorations. Whatever you need. Clara studied her for a long moment. Why? Because you gave me a second chance when you didn't have to. Elena's voice broke slightly. Because my husband can walk because of you. Because I was wrong, and I want to make it right. Clara thought about forgiveness. About holding grudges versus letting go. The church needs flowers, she said finally. White roses if you can find them. Elena's face lit up. I'll find them, I promise. She practically ran out of the shop. Margaret appeared from the back room. Did you just put Elena Garcia in charge of your wedding flowers? I did. The woman who helped destroy your reputation. The woman who's trying to rebuild it. Clara shrugged. People can change, Margaret. Sometimes you have to give them the chance. You're either very wise or very foolish. Probably both. Clara smiled slightly. But I'd rather be both than bitter. 3 days before the wedding, Jasper Callahan made his move. Clara was closing the shop when the door burst open. Jasper stood in the entrance, his face twisted with rage. You think you've won? Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. I don't know what you mean. Don't play stupid. He stepped inside, slamming the door behind him. My business is gone. My brother's lost half his council support. Everyone's talking about the miracle woman who saved Miguel Garcia's leg. That's not winning. That's just living. Living. Jasper laughed, the sound ugly. You ruined me. You came to this town with nothing, and somehow you turned everything around while I lost everything. You ruined yourself. Clara's voice hardened. You threw away a woman who would have worked beside you, who would have helped build your business. You decided my children made me worthless, and you made that decision in front of the whole town. Because they do make you worthless. No. Clara stepped closer, refusing to back down. They make me strong. Every time I wanted to give up, I looked at Lily and Jack and remembered why I couldn't. They're the reason I'm still standing. Jasper's face contorted. You should have crawled back to wherever you came from. I should have, but I didn't. And now you have to live with the consequences of your choice while I build a life with a man who actually sees my worth. Harper's a fool. Harper's the best man in this town. He saw me when no one else did. He helped me when everyone else turned away. Clara's chin lifted. That's not foolish. That's decent. Something you wouldn't understand. Jasper moved closer. Too close. Clara could smell whiskey on his breath. You think this is over. You think you can just marry the town doctor and everyone forgets what you are. What I am is a businesswoman, a mother, and in 3 days a wife. Clara didn't flinch. What you are is a drunk man threatening a woman alone in her shop. If you don't leave right now, I'll scream loud enough for the whole street to hear. You wouldn't dare. Try me. They stood, frozen eyes locked. Then the shop door opened again. Nate stepped inside, taking in the scene with one glance. His expression went cold as winter iron. Get away from her. Jasper turned, sneering. This isn't your concern, Harper. Everything about Clara is my concern. Nate moved to stand beside her. And you're in her shop uninvited, clearly intoxicated. I'd say that makes it very much my concern. She ruined me. You ruined yourself. Nate's voice was flat. The same pride that made you throw her away is the same pride that's destroyed your business. That's not Clara's fault. That's yours. Jasper's hands clenched into fists. For a moment, Clara thought he might swing. Instead, he laughed. Fine. Have her. Have your little wedding, and your little practice, and your pathetic domestic bliss. His eyes found Clara's. But don't think for a second that this town has really accepted you. They're just waiting. The moment you slip, the moment you make one mistake, they'll turn on you again. Maybe, Clara said quietly. But I'm not going to live my life waiting for that moment. I'm going to live it being happy, being loved, being exactly who I am. And who's that? Someone who survived you. Clara met his gaze without flinching. Someone stronger than anything you could throw at me. Jasper stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his face crumbled. Not rage anymore, but something sadder. Smaller. I could have had this, he said so quiet she almost didn't hear. I could have had you. No, Clara shook her head. You couldn't. Because you never saw me as a person. Only as property you didn't want. Jasper turned and walked out without another word. The door closed behind him. Clara's legs gave out. She grabbed the counter, breathing hard. "Are you all right?" Nate was at her side instantly. "Did he hurt you?" "No, he just—" She shook her head. "He looked so broken at the end. I almost felt sorry for him." "Don't." Nate's voice was fierce. "Whatever he's feeling now, he brought on himself." "I know." Clara straightened, steadying herself. "But it's still sad. All that pride, all that cruelty, and for what, an empty store and everyone in town thinking less of him. He made his choices. We all make choices." Clara looked at Nate. "I'm just glad mine led me here." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "2 more days," he murmured against her hair. "2 more days and you'll be mine. Officially. Permanently. I'm already yours." Clara pressed closer. "I have been for a while now." "Then let's make it legal." He pulled back, smiling. "Before anything else happens." Clara laughed, the tension breaking. "Nothing else is going to happen." She was wrong. The night before the wedding, a blizzard hit Silver Creek. Clara woke to howling wind and Ida pounding on her door. "There's an emergency at the Garcia Ranch. Miguel's oldest son fell through the ice on the creek. They pulled him out, but he's not breathing right." Clara was already moving, pulling on clothes. "Where's Nate?" "Already on his way, but the roads are bad. He might not make it in time." Ida's face was pale. "Clara, you know more about emergency medicine than anyone else in this town. If Nate can't get there, I'll go." "The storm. I'll go." Clara grabbed her coat. "Watch the twins. I'll be back as soon as I can." She rode through the blizzard on a borrowed horse, half blind from driving snow, following a path she'd learned from delivering supplies to outlying ranches. The Garcia Ranch appeared through the white curtain like a ghost. Clara burst through the door to find chaos. Elena was sobbing. Miguel sat helpless in a chair, his injured leg preventing him from helping. And on the kitchen table lay a boy of maybe 12, lips, blue chest barely moving. "I'm here." Clara moved to the table immediately. "How long was he in the water?" 5 minutes, maybe more." Miguel's voice cracked. He stopped breathing twice on the way back. Clara assessed the boy quickly. Pulse weak, breathing shallow, skin cold as ice. "I need blankets, every blanket you have, and hot water, not boiling, just hot. We need to warm him slowly." Elena scattered to obey. Clara worked frantically, stripping off wet clothes, wrapping the boy in layers, rubbing his extremities to restore circulation. His breathing grew worse. "Come on," Clara muttered. "Come on, stay with me." The boy's chest stopped moving. "No." Clara tilted his head back, opening the airway. "No, you don't get to die. Not tonight." She breathed into his mouth. Once. Twice. Pressed on his chest the way she'd seen Nate do during emergencies. Nothing. Again. Breathe. Press. Breathe. Press. Elena was praying in Spanish. Miguel had his face in his hands. Clara refused to give up. Breathe. Press. Breathe. Press. The boy coughed. Water spewed from his mouth. His chest heaved. His eyes flew open, wild and terrified. "Mama! I'm here, mijo!" Elena rushed to his side. "I'm here. You're safe." Clara sat back, shaking from head to toe. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. The door burst open. Nate stumbled in, covered in snow. "The roads were blocked. I had to go around through Miller's Pass." He stopped, taking in the scene. The boy breathing. Clara sitting beside him. "What happened?" "He stopped breathing." Clara's voice came out thin. I did what you taught me." Nate moved to examine the boy, his hands gentle but thorough. His breathing stable, heart rates improving. He looked at Clara with something like wonder. "You saved his life." "I did what anyone would have done. No. Nate's voice was firm. You did what a trained physician would have done. Most people would have panicked. You kept him alive until I got here. Miguel struggled to his feet, balancing on his good leg. Mrs. Morrison, I don't know how to what you did. Just take care of your son. Clara stood her legs unsteady. He's going to need warmth and rest for the next few days. Watch for fever. We will. We'll watch him every minute. Miguel's eyes were wet. You saved him. First my leg, now my boy. How can we ever repay? You don't have to repay anything. Clara moved toward the door. Just be happy. Be a family. That's payment enough. The ride back was quieter. The storm had died down, leaving a world blanketed in white. Nate rode beside her, reaching over occasionally to touch her arm, as if reassuring himself she was real. You're getting married tomorrow, he said finally. And you spent the night before saving a boy's life in a blizzard. I'm aware. Most brides rest before their weddings. I'm not most brides. Clara smiled tiredly. Besides, I couldn't have slept anyway. Too nervous. About the wedding. About everything. She looked at him through the darkness. About whether I deserve any of this. Clara. Nate pulled his horse closer. You just rode through a blizzard to save a child. You brought him back from the edge of death with nothing but knowledge and determination. How can you possibly question whether you deserve happiness? Because good things never lasted for me before. Her voice cracked slightly. Every time I thought I'd found solid ground, something came along and destroyed it. Not this time. How do you know? Because I'm not going anywhere. Nate reached for her hand across the space between horses. Because I love you. Because in 12 hours, I'm going to stand in front of everyone in this town and promise to spend the rest of my life with you. Clara squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his certainty. 12 hours, she repeated. 12 hours. Then you're mine. I'm already yours. Then 12 hours until it's official. He smiled through the darkness. Think you can stay out of emergencies until then? I make no promises. He laughed, the sound warm against the cold. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence. The wedding took place at noon. Clara stood in the boarding house's upstairs room, staring at her reflection, while Margaret made final adjustments to her dress. Cream silk, simple lines, a small bustle in back, and delicate embroidery at the bodice. More beautiful than anything Clara had ever owned. You look stunning, Ida said from the doorway. Nate's going to forget how to breathe. I'm terrified. That's normal. Ida moved to stand beside her. Every bride is terrified. It means you understand what you're doing matters. What if I'm making a mistake? Do you love him? More than I thought I could love anyone again. Does he love you? Yes. No hesitation. She was certain of that at least. Then it's not a mistake. Ida took her hands. Clara, I've watched you these past 3 months. Watched you build a life from nothing. Watched you face down everyone who tried to tear you apart. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. Clara felt tears threatening. I don't feel strong. Strong people never do. They're too busy doing what needs doing to notice their own courage. Ida squeezed gently. Now, your babies are downstairs with Elena Garcia, who volunteered to watch them during the ceremony. The church is full, and my son is waiting to marry you. Elena's watching the twins. She insisted, said it was the least she could do. Ida smiled. Redemption takes many forms, Clara. Today it looks like a woman who hurt you, wanting to help you celebrate. Clara blinked back tears. I'm ready. Good. Margaret stepped back, examining her work. Because you're about to become the most talked about bride in Silver Creek history. I'm always the most talked about something in this town. True. But today, they'll be talking about how beautiful you looked. Margaret grinned. And that's a considerable improvement. The walk to the church felt like a dream. Clara moved through streets she'd walked 100 times, past shops where people had whispered about her past, the spot where Jasper had thrown her away. But today, faces smiled from windows. People called out congratulations. Children threw flower petals in her path. The same town that had judged her now celebrated her. Clara didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The church was packed, every pew filled, people standing along the walls. Clara paused in the doorway, overwhelmed. Then she saw Nate. He stood at the altar, dressed in his best suit, his face lit with a joy so pure it took her breath away. Everything else faded. She walked toward him one step at a time, past all the faces that had doubted her past, all the whispers that had tried to destroy her. Toward the man who had seen her when no one else did. Toward the future she'd almost lost hope of finding. The ceremony passed in a blur of words and promises. Clara spoke her vows with a voice that only trembled slightly. I, Clara Jane Morrison, take you Nathaniel James Harper to be my husband, to love and cherish in sickness and in health, in good times and bad. I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes, to be your partner in all things, to love your mother as my own, and to build a family with you that honors everything we've both survived. Nate's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. Clara, you arrived in this town with nothing but 2 babies and a broken heart. You've built a business, saved lives, and shown everyone what real strength looks like. I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your courage, to love your children as my own, to stand beside you against anyone who tries to tear you down, and to thank God every day that Jasper Callahan was fool enough to let you go. Laughter rippled through the congregation. The minister pronounced them man and wife. Nate kissed her, not the restrained proper kiss she'd expected, but something deeper. A claiming. A promise. The church erupted in cheers. Clara pulled back breathless to find Nate grinning at her. Worth the wait. Every second. The reception filled the town hall. Clara moved through the crowd accepting congratulations, shaking hands, embracing people who'd become friends despite everything. Sarah Henderson, Margaret Cole, the Garcias. All of them, including the boy she'd saved the night before, wrapped in blankets but insisting on attending. Even some of the people who'd gossiped, who'd judged, who'd believed the worst. They came to her now with apologies in their eyes, if not always on their lips. Clara accepted them all. You're too forgiving, Margaret said, watching her embrace a woman who'd once called her names in the street. Maybe, Clara shrugged. Or maybe I'm just tired of carrying anger. It's heavy. And you've carried enough. I've carried enough, Clara smiled. Time to put some of it down. Near the end of the reception, Thaddeus Callahan approached. Clara's whole body tensed. Nate materialized at her side instantly. Councilman? Dr. Harper. Mrs. Harper. Thaddeus's voice was stiff, formal. I came to offer congratulations. That's unexpected? Perhaps. Thaddeus paused, clearly struggling with something. I also came to apologize. My brother's behavior, my own actions at the council meeting, the way this town treated you. Clara stared at him. You're apologizing. I'm acknowledging that we were wrong. His jaw tightened. You've proven yourself, Mrs. Harper. Your business, your medical knowledge, the way you've conducted yourself despite every obstacle. He paused. My son died because I was too proud to accept the limitations of medicine. I've spent years blaming Dr. Harper instead of accepting the truth. The truth being that some things can't be fixed, that death comes regardless of what we want. Thaddeus's eyes met hers. You've faced more loss than most people could survive, and you kept going. That deserves respect, not condemnation. Clara didn't know what to say. Nate spoke instead. Thank you, Thaddeus. That took courage. It took too long. The councilman nodded stiffly. I won't take more of your time. Enjoy your celebration. He walked away. Clara turned to Nate. Did that just happen? It did. Thaddeus Callahan apologized to me. He did. At my wedding reception. He did. Nate smiled. Miracles do happen, apparently. Clara laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. This whole day feels like a miracle. Get used to it. Nate pulled her close. You deserve miracles, Clara Harper. You've earned them. Clara Harper. Her new name. Her new life. That night, after the reception ended and the guests departed, Clara stood in the house that was now her home, their home, and watched her twins sleeping peacefully in their new nursery. Nate came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. They look happy, he murmured. They look safe. Clara leaned back against him. That's all I ever wanted for them. Safety. They have it now. We all do. Clara turned in his arms. 3 months ago, I stood in the town square and thought my life was over. Jasper had just rejected me. I had nothing. No money, no friends, no hope. And now I have everything. Her voice caught. A business, a family, a husband who loves me, a town that finally sees me as something other than a scandal. You built all of that. We built it. Together. Clara pressed closer. I couldn't have survived without you, Nate. Without your mother. Without Margaret and everyone else who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. You would have survived. His voice was certain. You're a survivor, Clara. You would have found a way. Maybe, but it would have been harder, lonelier. She looked up at him. You gave me hope when I had none. That's not nothing. It's everything. He kissed her forehead. Now, it's our wedding night, and you spent last night saving a child from drowning in a blizzard. You must be exhausted. I am. Then let's go to bed. He smiled. We have the rest of our lives to celebrate. Tonight, you need rest. Clara let him lead her to their bedroom, and lay down beside him in the darkness. Nate? Thank you. For everything. You don't have to thank me. I want to. She found his hand in the darkness. When I answered that advertisement, I thought I was looking for safety, for stability, for a place to raise my children without fear. And instead I found you. Her voice softened. I found love. Real love. The kind I'd stopped believing in. I'd stopped believing too. Nate's grip tightened. After Emily died after Grace, I thought I'd never feel anything again. Just numbness. Going through the motions. And now I feel everything. His voice roughened. Every day with you is a gift I didn't expect, didn't deserve. You deserve happiness, Nate. You always did. So do you. He pulled her closer. So do you, Clara. She fell asleep in his arms, warm and safe and loved. For the first time since Robert's death, she didn't dream of loss. She dreamed of the future. 1 year later, Clara stood in the doorway of her thriving shop and watched Silver Creek go about its daily business. Lily and Jack, now 18 months old, toddled around the shop under the watchful eye of Elena Garcia, who'd become an unofficial aunt to them. Margaret had expanded the business twice. They now employed 3 other women and provided goods to ranches as far as 50 miles away. Nate's practice had grown too, especially after Clara returned as his official partner, properly credentialed this time with documentation from a correspondence course in nursing she'd completed over the winter. The Callahans were gone. Jasper had left for California after his business collapsed. Thaddeus remained on the council, but had become, if not an ally, at least no longer an enemy. And Clara. Clara had become something she never expected. A pillar of the community, a woman people trusted, a wife, a mother, a healer, a businesswoman, someone who mattered. You're smiling, Nate said, appearing at her side with a cup of tea. What are you thinking about? Everything. Clara accepted the tea. Where I started, where I am now. Any regrets? Just one. She looked at him with mock solemnity. I should have charged Jasper Callahan for the emotional distress. Nate laughed. I don't think he could have afforded it. Probably not. Clara's expression softened. No regrets, really. Even the hard parts brought me here. To me. To you. To this life. To everything I never knew I needed. She set down her tea and took his hand. I answered that advertisement because I was desperate, running from debt and grief and a life that had fallen apart. I never expected to find what I found. What did you find? Clara thought about the question. About the long road from Tennessee to Dakota Territory, about frozen squares and public humiliation, and the slow, painful work of building something from nothing. Home, she said finally. I found home. Nate squeezed her hand. And I found you. Best decision Jasper Callahan ever made, throwing you away. I'm starting to agree. They stood together watching their town, their life, their future unfold before them. Clara Morrison had arrived in Silver Creek with nothing but 2 babies and a desperate hope. She'd been rejected, humiliated, torn down, and nearly destroyed. But she hadn't broken. She'd built. She'd fought. She'd loved. And in the end, she'd won. Not by defeating her enemies, but by becoming someone they couldn't destroy. That was her real victory. That was her real legacy. Clara Harper. Wife, mother, healer, businesswoman, stood in the doorway of the life she'd built and felt for the first time in years completely whole. She'd come seeking safety. She'd found something better. She'd found herself.